And happy 2025 to all of us here from MNCAA and from our NCHC crew. Back with you now as Max Veech. I'm again Nick Maxson with all the college hockey news that we have to catch up on. Max, welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks off, much needed time away. How were the holidays? How are you feeling? And welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be back. New year 2025. I'll say I have the same resolution I've had for the last 3 years, and that's to be more punctual. So I'm already behind the 8 ball on that one, but I'm feeling good about this year, despite a couple of tough showings from the Bulldogs already. But we can get into that in just a second here. I want to hear about your holidays and your new year. Doing well?
Yes, well, pretty crazy. And as we were talking pre-recording, they come and go quick, right? It seems like you get to mid-November, and then you start looking ahead. It's Thanksgiving, and then it's like, oh, but then there's still a month, and then before you know it, it's like, wait, did the ball just drop in New York? Like, did we just literally turn the calendar again? Like, it's crazy, man. It's a great time. Got to see, the extended family, some folks I don't get to see very often, hang out with them. So that was good. But again, it's a much needed little mental break for me. They'll still been calling hockey. I've been doing some high school hockey over the course of the collegiate break. In fact, just did one last night, Farmington and Apple Valley, Burnsville. I've got another one coming up, Chaska and Chanhassen, Saturday at 3 o'clock.
That's a big game.
That could be a good game, although if you read between the lines, Chanhassen should be the favorite in that matchup, although it's high school hockey. We've seen some crazy things happen, right, Max?
That's right.
But let's, shall we say, get everybody back into the college hockey landscape here. Some matchups to talk about over our course of our break. The Bulldogs had 3 contests. Let's just say this, Max, because we've talked about this before the break. There are some positive signs still. Yes, the win-losses aren't there to where we would like them to be, but you can see that things are coming together. And it kind of shows in the results that we had over the course of the holiday break here.
Yeah, I would say the first one. So I was going to say to start the year strong, but technically they ended last year strong. It's potato, tomato, depending on what time zone you're watching it in. UMD gets the win over Bemidji, 4-2. So officially a split on the season between those two clubs because they played, if you remember, the first game of the season against Bemidji. I wasn't sure how I would like the split of that series with them. But having an extra game over the holidays with an opponent that's really close here, as a little bit of an appetizer to get you back in, I didn't actually mind it. I don't know that all of the college kids loved it, having to be working hard and playing a game on New Year's Eve, but I'm sure they'll get over it. And at least for UMD, they won, so I'm sure going out that night was a little bit of fun as well. But on another note, that was on Tuesday of this past week, so a week plus a day, from when we were recording this. And then they had another game on Friday. So it's kind of rare that you're going to see a college hockey team have 3 games in a matter of technically 5 days, but we'll just call it 4 days when you're talking about how late they're playing anyway. So a lot of getting back into the swing of things and having to do it very, very quickly for UMD. Luckily for them, they were able to do that on Tuesday against Bemidji. Good showing against a good team. I know we've talked about Bemidji and their ability to play with just about anybody, and we've kind of laughed at them on the other hand. At no matter what, they seem to split every series, and just even when your series isn't played the same weekend, it happened again for them. So I don't know what the answer is there for Bemidji, because I tried looking at it on whether it was a Friday night problem or a Saturday night problem, and it seems like it's split between those two as well. So they'll figure it out. They just need to get hot, and they've got a goalie that can do it. So if they can kind of continue scoring goals and not putting Scholl or whoever else is going to be in the backup spot in a bad position, I think they're in a spot to win more games moving forward. But on the UMD side, it was great to see some success on the power play, going 1 for 3 there. Shaugabay getting the only power play goal. And then, the depth of the scoring showing that it is still relevant on the Bulldogs, with Dubinsky, Gallatin, and Bentz getting the other 3 in that game there. And not any one of them being unfamiliar to the scoring sheet. But this year, they're certainly not routine or regular names that you're going to see, because those have been your Dom James or either the Plants. Shaugabay obviously is a familiar name when you're looking at the box scores there. But it was nice to see all of those guys kind of get the recognition and rewards for putting in some of the hard work there. And I think UMD was just the better team in most aspects, 34-8 in terms of shots. Blocks were even, and then the faceoffs were almost identical as well. So good win to get going on that Tuesday against Bemidji there, and then they go into this past weekend, and that's when it's their last non-conference games of the season, and they've only got one more bye week for the rest of the year because they had so many at the beginning half of the season that they just don't have space in their schedule to have any more in the back half there. But Alaska coming to town here, one of their 65 road series that they're playing, which I believe means UMD is up there early in the season next year. I think it's October for their repaying the debt to Alaska for making the trip down. So that'll be fun. Looking forward to that. If I'm able to make it up there, we'll see. It's always been on my list of places to go. But as far as the hockey that was played against the Nanooks, Friday was not a good showing from the Bulldogs at all, really. I want to say that it was assistant coach Adam Krause who had said during the game in one of the interviews that the first 20-40 minutes of hockey were some of the worst that they've played all year, and it would be hard to refute that based on what you saw. The score didn't necessarily reflect that, but they took advantage of a couple of opportunities which they've struggled with in the past, and it was Carter Loney and Aaron Pionk scoring, and that was Pionk's first goal of the year. I mean, he's had plenty of assists, but his first goal of the season coming on what was essentially a breakaway. So being a former forward, he was relatively comfortable in that position, thankfully for him and for UMD in that game. But tough start to the season for him in terms of just getting going on the score sheet. And they needed it in that game because they only had 20 shots to Alaska's 36, and Klayton Knapp was in net instead of Adam Gajan. He's still out with an injury. And he played very, very well. I think Knapp had a standout performance. I don't think that's stretching too much to say. I don't know if he officially made the SportsCenter top 10 or not. I know that they had liked one of the newscasters' tweets about it, which I'm assuming they just use as a bookmark to go back and look at him and decide who's going to make it anyway. But he stood on his head for a couple of the saves there and was easily the best player on the ice in that Friday matchup. But only one penalty in the game, so relatively clean, both from the actual play and from the referees' calls. That was one of the things that I had said I wanted to see carry over from the World Junior Tournament, which I'm sure we'll get into in just a sec here as well. But the letting the guys play a little bit more throughout the weekend and not calling all these little ticky-tacky things that don't necessarily affect the game whatsoever, and only bringing it up or stopping play when you get something that does affect the game or is egregious or whatever. And calling out guys when they're either flopping or embellishing a little bit. I know that we don't like to give the embellishment penalties, but I mean, we still do in the NCAA. But just calling them out and saying, hey, don't do that. And it seemed to work in the World Juniors, but I'm getting sidetracked anyway. So 2-2 tie in that game, shootout win for absolutely no reason, no purpose other than feel good. And Klayton Knapp deserved that. So I'm happy he was able to get that done. And then Saturday, it was a very similar result, but a wildly different game script. I would say if you told me at the beginning of the season that UMD would set a program record for shots allowed and it being 10, and the game went into overtime still, I'd be like, well, surely UMD won that. They did not. That is what happened, and UMD still found a way to lose. So 2-1 overtime loss there, 10 shots on net, and it was enough for Alaska to get a few past Knapp again being in net there. And UMD had 40 shots. So their goalie, I got to give him a shout out. I think it's Nicholas Grabko. He was stellar, is about as good as I can say for him on the ice there. And they were 1 minute and 2 seconds away from having a shutout on UMD there. The Bulldogs scored late, forced an overtime. They got a couple of chances in overtime as well, but Alaska just capitalized on it sooner. And with, I think, only one shot in that overtime period as well. So Tough weekend for them. It seems like it was a pretty demoralizing loss, just giving up so few shots and still not finding a way into that win column. But that was also all being done, those 3 games technically, without Max Plante or Adam Kleber, who were busy having a little bit more fun up in Canada and coming home with a couple of gold medals and some wins that they'll remember for sure.
I want to touch on that too, Max. The World Junior Hockey Championship, certainly, and I'm not wrong in saying this, and I don't know if this is a hot take, but in terms of amateur world tournaments across any sport, this tops them all. There's not even a question. And it's coming to Minnesota next year, which is incredibly exciting, except if you look at the ticket prices, holy shnikes.
I think it was $1,500 just for the opening rounds, and it only got you 2 games, if I remember right, unless I was reading it wrong. But
it's either way, it's not cheap, right? It's not cheap. And if you want good seats, at least double, if not triple that, dollar amount. I would imagine those tickets are going to be, hot commodities. And I don't know exactly when, because right now I think they're only setting out pack type deals right now. I think as we get closer probably to November of next year is when at some point single game tickets will go on sale. Those will probably go very, very quickly. So for those of you who are listening and watching, just make sure you keep your eyes peeled for those. And maybe I think there is maybe an email sign up too that I think you can be a part of for ticket updates. So I would highly recommend that because of the prices of these tickets, which I think if you do the math, I think if you do the packs, it ends up being like $150 to $170 per game. If I'm doing the math correctly, not cheap, right? So if the single game tickets go on sale, you're going to have to act quickly when they do. So be ready for those when they become available, although I do think it's going to be a while before they do. But with that being said, Max, yes, a couple of players on both of our squads and in the conference taking home a gold medal for Team USA. And more impressively, this is the first time ever that Team USA has repeated as gold medal winners at the World Junior Hockey Championship. If you're David Carl, you cannot write a better resume to be a coach at the next level. And by that, more particularly the NHL. I will say this, though, Max. I had the opportunity to talk to St. Cloud State defenseman Colin Ralph, who was on that squad today, just by random chance. And I kind of asked him about it and just essentially lauded it like, wow, like what an experience. He talked about the game against Canada and the in the prelim rounds and how he's never been a part of a game that had that much energy. The crowd wasn't as loud. And I kind of joked with them. I asked him, is there a part of you that says you kind of wanted Canada to be in that gold medal game? He's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, able to take home the gold medal, pretty special moment for the players, the coaching staff, the support staff. And again, a continued rise in terms of being almost neck and neck with, Team Canada's being essentially a hockey superpower. Max, I want to ask you this. Has USA hockey, maybe I should phrase it that way, have they evened the playing field with Canada in terms of developing some of the best talent in the world at a level and at a quantity where you could argue that Canada's no longer just the sole throne on top of the youth hockey world? Is that not true after these results, you think?
I would say that it would be hard to refute that for just about anybody. Not only these results, but the uptick in the college players' impact immediately when they go into those National Hockey League roles. You look at Brock Faber being one of the league's best defensemen immediately in that first couple of games when he went over from Minnesota, and then in his rookie season as well. And then you look at Cale Makar is probably still the best defenseman coming out of the college ranks. And I don't want to say that it's just defenseman either, because you get on that forward side of the puck, and yes, you still have your McDavid and Austin Matthews and all these other people who are Canadian at heart, even though Austin Matthews is American, but plays for a Canadian team. Anyway,
I didn't realize Scottsdale, Arizona was Canadian, but sure. All right.
yeah, he's Canadian by association. He's been there too long is kind of where I'm going with it. But you get your Bedard, you get your Connor McDavid, you get all the other Connors that are in the National Hockey League coming from Canada. And yes, they are still there, but a lot more Americans are young Americans specifically are showing, they are very, very impactful. And I wanted to bring up Hughes as well, but that's just going to feed into the stereotype of defenseman, but scoring defenseman. So
no, Jack Hughes, right? Remember
the other Hughes. Yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, I think that everybody that watches the NHL has seen a slow progression from the only people that are going to be, those top 3 guaranteed pieces are coming from Canada. That's not the case anymore. And I think it's very, very good for the sport as a whole, just because you've got a much larger player pool and kind of equal opportunity. But it's good for USA Hockey specifically as well, because it makes some of those Canadian kids who were for sure going to be going the Canadian route, maybe dip their toes into the college waters, or explore it at the very least. And now that we've got the quote unquote open borders from the Canadian leagues to NCAA hockey, it's only going to expedite that. So that, in conjunction or combined with the success that we're seeing at the World Junior stage, which is probably the most viewed or most regularly viewed at the younger age levels anyway, it is only going to be probably making that trend even stronger. At least that's what I hope for anyway. But do you have any other thoughts on that, or do you see it a different way?
I don't want to say I see it differently. I do think that not only in the college ranks, but in terms of, because it all starts at the youth levels, right?
Yep.
USA Hockey, in terms of how they've redefined how they're building quality, skilled hockey players. And it's going to translate into this year's draft, where, again, James Haggins, that center for Boston College, is widely regarded. In fact, we saw them personally against St. Cloud State earlier this year. He's dynamic. He's a heck of a hockey player.
Yeah.
And he's right now not a consensus, but pretty close to a consensus pick for the #1 overall pick in this year's NHL draft. So Buffalo, get ready. No, I'm kidding. But I do think that, there's still room to grow, especially on the West Coast, right? I think if there's one thing still that separates Canada from the U.S. is the U.S., although I think the sport is being embraced more in non-traditional markets, there's still some gaps. For example, the West, like I said, the West Coast, especially at the collegiate level, that's still kind of like the Lewis and Clark next realm of expedition that they have to be able to advance to. And until they do that, I still feel like USA Hockey still has untapped potential in other parts of the country. That places like Michigan, Minnesota, Massachusetts, New York are kind of the hot spots. But I will tell you, recently, it's been Texas, it's been California that have seen a spike in terms of building high quality players. What the Golden Knights and their community impact. I saw a stat from another writer in that area that said that before the Golden Knights played their first NHL game, there was maybe less than 100 youth hockey players registered in the state of Nevada. Since their inception until nowadays, that number has exploded to over 1,000. There's more, I think 4 or 8 more youth hockey rinks being built or are in completion to be built in the Las Vegas area. So hockey is growing in the U.S. And I think if there's anything, the next or last frontier is that we just haven't hit every single corner of the U.S. just yet. That's how I see it. But it's leaps and bounds advanced even just 10, 15 years ago, right? So
yeah, I would say you're 100% right on that. I do want to see more Western programs jump in there. I was just laughing to myself a little bit because Canadians in general live very, very close to the Canada and U.S. border. So obviously that's where all of their hockey teams are. Almost all of the U.S. hockey programs, at least at the collegiate level, are at the midpoint of the country or up. And so, everybody is just kind of in that border battle area. And it's kind of funny to me to think about teams that would be outside of that. And, we used to have one, Alabama Huntsville, that was the outlier by a long shot. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities to see, maybe not them, but a Georgia, or I think we just saw Tennessee and North Carolina and some of these other teams investing in club teams, jerseys, and everything else. And I don't know if that's university funded or if that's privately funded. I suppose I should probably look into that, but I'm sure that some of these places that are building arenas, that's certainly university funded. So there's certainly at the collegiate level, in terms of the requirements that one would think to hold capacity for traveling fans or their own fans as well. And I don't think it's going to be long before we start to see maybe not an explosion in college hockey, but some of these other fringe programs jump in. Illinois has been one that people have rumored for a decade now, probably even longer. And it's going to be embarrassing for them when, you see a Cal or a USC or anybody in Florida or that Georgia program that we were just talking about to jump in before them. But
which they will at its current rate.
Yeah, I do kind of want to see that, just to shame them and force some of these other teams and programs that have teased it for a little bit into actually joining. And we just saw UNLV. They had a phenomenal showing against Denver and some of these other programs throughout the last couple of years, and being, like you had just mentioned, in that Vegas stratosphere, a good hockey community kind of growing, and an interest that, some of these people that have gone to a Vegas Knights game, which is the best show in an arena in hockey in the country, maybe close. They're saying, oh, I can't afford that, I'd still like to go watch some high level hockey. Denver's coming to town, or Michigan or Minnesota or some of these other widely known programs is going to come play UNLV. And I'm not saying UNLV is going to suck either. I think that they can build a good program. Arizona's done it in a very short order, but if they want to go check that out, I think that's going to help the hockey community in that area and out west as a whole as well.
And it has to continue to gauge interest, right? And the one drawback that we saw was the Cactus Cup, right? Acrisure Arena. I saw the smile, and that's the only thing I needed to see from you, Max. And it's funny because there were people that were telling me that were talking with the folks who run Acrisure Arena and the Cactus Cup that were confident that they would be able to sell out the building. Again, the Firebirds have been very successful down there in their very short history there in the desert. But it kind of shows that the game itself isn't the attraction just yet, right? It's more of an entertainment option. Granted, in California, right, there are multiple options for entertainment. So I do think that there's work to be done, right? But it shows that the bubble continues to expand, and the quality of play and the quality of players that USA Hockey continues to raise is on its way up. And it's just great to see again, Team USA. Again, congratulations, Brett Larson for St. Cloud State, Colin Ralph, Austin Bernovic, Adam Kleber for UMD, and please tell me the other late insertion there for the Bulldogs that also received a gold medal. Max Plante. Yes, thank you. So those players individually, first of all, you can't take that memorable experience away. Two, you tend to see a bit of a boost, right, when you go up against that kind of of opponent. You learn about yourself. You do learn about shall we say, some of the things that you do well, and also some things you can get better at. It is a takeaway that players who participate in that can't measure that, right? Zeev Buium, again, the NCT, and what a filthy pass that was on the Teddy Stiga overtime gold medal clinching goal there against Team Finland. Max, I'm going to go off the rails a little bit here, but I want to talk about Zeev Buium a little bit. We've watched him last year put up 50 points in as a defenseman in the NCHC. And if I remember correctly, that hadn't been done in quite some time in terms of a collegiate defenseman. He was also, I think, a plus 20 also on that. So he wasn't the offensive, stalwart. He was also taking care of his own end, but monumental for the U.S. and the World Juniors. Is Zeev Buium with his resume of winning already one national championship. He's got now 2 gold medals. Yes, 2 gold medals now in the World Juniors, and looking to be every bit of a top NHL prospect that the Wild somehow fell into their lap. I still am shocked to this day. I was in Vegas for the draft that he was not picked, before the Wild got him at essentially 11. Is he, after this season's conclusion, regardless of how it ends, is he turning pro?
I can't say for certain, but what we've seen in the past from players that have accomplished as much as he has, I don't see why he would feel the need to stay or an urge to stay. If they had made, back-to-back national championships and lost them both, or didn't win his most recent World Juniors, or, felt like he was missing something there and wanted to achieve a little bit more, then that's where you're going to see some players that have that talent level and the opportunity to go still stick around for one more year. But he's, got the national championships. He's got back-to-back World Juniors. He's got all of these accolades and good press. And it just wouldn't make a ton of sense to risk maybe a little bit more injury or some of these other potential issues and impact his professional status when he's done what he needs to do and proved what he needs to prove at the college level before making that next step. And I think he's looking for another challenge. I haven't obviously spoken to him at a personal level, but looking at some of the interviews that he's done, he's very confident in what he's accomplished. And I think that he's looking to take that next step and be challenged a little bit more from the next level of play. And he will be challenged, especially as one of the younger guys coming in. He's not like a Kaprizov that's coming in as a seasoned veteran in a different league or anything like that. He'll be coming in as a relatively young guy, maybe not 20, but I mean, if he makes it at the end of the year here, 20 is the 20. Number. So yeah, I don't know. I think he's ready to make that leap, and I don't know that there's many people that doubt anything to do with that. So I love the idea of him and Faber on one line, but to put them together sounds like a little bit of an overkill. Maybe it would be fun for a game or two, but I think he's ready to make that next move, and I don't see any reason why he would stick around.
Yeah, it's we'll be waiting to see, right, what happens. I think he could have easily signed a contract after last season. Granted, even talking to David Carl at NCHC Media Day, the one thing that he touted Bouillon on was a couple things. One, obviously just a fantastic human being, but also two, he's incredibly coachable. He understands that the offensive side of his game is there. There's a couple of things I think they wanted to clean up, sort of shall we say, improve on his defensive game. There wasn't much. I also saw some scouting video prior to the NHL draft that says that there was any, one thing about Bouillon that you could maybe point to and say this is an area that he could improve on. And granted, this is one or a couple of scouts' opinions. This doesn't mean that, this is, a gray cloud over Zeev, but was plays along the wall in the defensive zone. And also sometimes understanding, because he's a defenseman that loves to use his feet, that sometimes he can, shall we say, be Sam Darnold-ish, or maybe hold on to the puck a little bit too much, looking for different options when you just don't have that time and space in the pro level. But those are very nitpicky type things that can easily be addressed. And, his season at Denver so far, and again, another World Junior gold medal, would say that he's well on his way to making some improvements there. Max, there is an elephant in the room, though, that we have to discuss.
Yes, we do.
That is, it's back to conference play. It is officially now the second half of the NCHC season. And we have a matchup, and it's between my Huskies and your Bulldogs at Amsoil Arena this weekend. Always a battle between our two squads against Sandlin versus Brett Larson. Both guys that
Brett Larson coming back with a gold medal.
Yeah, how about that, right? And at the end of the day, same school, right? Defense first, responsible, good puck game management, and getting, your licks in the ground game, especially in the forecheck. So regardless, and we've seen this in years past, including last year, that no matter where these teams are in the standings or or how they've been playing, it means absolutely nothing when these two teams come together twice a year.
Yep.
We won't see them in St. Cloud until, again, the last weekend of the regular season, because that's just how they love to tease me. But at the end of the day, Max, Bulldogs, again, keeping things close. They continue to improve St. Cloud. I think they have answered one question, that is who's going to be taking over Isaac Posh. It's Gavin Enright. He did win NCHC Goaltender of the Month, by the way, and I do think well earned. But this is shaping up to be quite the matchup for both these squads. I want to get your initial reaction to this upcoming series here, which will be in Duluth.
Yeah. One, I don't want to diminish the goaltender of the month. I just had a funny thought pop into my head. I was like, how many NCHC games total do you think happened in December? And I couldn't come up with a number offhand, but it wasn't a lot. I know that there was some people that had left early. I think Denver was one of the teams that had one game in the first weekend, and then we're done for the month as well. But like I said, don't want to diminish anything. He deserved it. He played very, very well in the games that he was available. Initial thoughts, and I don't want to put this into your head or my own head for different reasons, but
try me.
if UMD sweeps St. Cloud, they have the same conference record, despite the fact that UMD has looked far worse than St. Cloud in conference this year. So
yep.
I'm just saying it's a possibility that could happen. Now, St. Cloud would have an edge in points by one, even if they lost both outright in regulation. But as far as actual records go, there's a potential that they end up with the same record at the end of the weekend here. Do I think that's going to happen? No. I would be maybe not happy. I would be content. I would settle for a split for sure. Mm-hmm. And that's over the course of a full season, usually how it goes between UMD and St. Cloud. But I think that maybe UMD is just a little bit more hungry, especially with a poor performance this past weekend, by most accounts anyway, in terms of what they were expecting to do. Getting two scorers back, well, maybe not one scorer back, two key pieces back. Kleber was sorely missed on the defensive side of the puck there, not only for his size, but just his ability to know where to be playing positionally more than anything. And then Max Plante as well. We've discussed it 3 or 4 different times in the past, where Zam is a great player in his own right. He is taken to a whole nother level when Max is there, especially when they're playing on the same line. So looking forward to seeing that version of him and both of them playing as well. I will say I am a little bit nervous about Brnovik, because I have watched him play this year, but not, the extent of full games. Like I saw him out on the World Juniors, and he didn't have as much ice time as your Ryan Leonard or any of those other, BCBU guys that were on that top line or mixed in throughout the lineup there. But he saw a good amount of ice, and he narrowly missed an open net there for a goal, which I'm sure he's still kicking himself about. But just to be able to get into that position and get a clean shot off of a very quick and tight pass like that is impressive. And a guy like him, he's going to learn from that. And, UMD is going to have to be ready and either eat that puck in front of the net there, or have Gajan or Knapp or somebody else ready to get it when it comes across, because I'm sure he saw that and something clicked in his mind where, oh, that was close. I liked that. I'm going to fix it, and I want to do that more in the future. And he's done it plenty already this year, but knowing that he could have done it at the world stage, he wants to prove that that was a fluke and that his standard is to put that one in.
I don't disagree with that. For Brnovik, leading the team in goals, by the way, as a freshman, kind of mimicking a freshman we saw 4 years ago. Oh yeah, Vidi Mietinen. So it's different though, right? Vidi was more of the smaller caliber player. I don't want to say prototypical European player, but kind of, right? Where
kind of
he loved his time and space, but also could slow the game down. Brnovik can, but he also likes to play the game with pace, right? So it's a bit of a different approach. The other thing is Brnovik can one-time the absolute bejesus out of the puck. He's got an NHL release, a big reason why he was a 6th round pick of the Anaheim Ducks. And not only that, but Brnovik, He can distribute the puck too. So he is a dual threat when he's in the offensive zone, a very smart player. Uses his size. Again, he's 6'3", I believe, when he comes on the ice. He's got a big wingspan, and just sees the ice and sees the play developing really, really well. So he is very much the player to watch if you're a UMD. And for St. Cloud, I get the shot at Enright a little bit. Let's just call it what it is. You took a shot at my goaltender. But here's the thing. I get it, right? I get it. Now, I will tell you this. For Gavin Enright to come in as essentially beginning of the year, the third goaltender, right? Now, mind you, St. Cloud had somebody else, right? It was the kid from Northern Michigan who was injured. He was actually rehabbing and then decided, you know what? I'm done with this, right? So they had to, in not the best of timing, to go out and find a goaltender. And Gavin Enright said, yep, sure, why not? To think about him and what his prognosis was to get ice time, and now he's being earned the right to essentially be the goaltender that's going to have to probably carry St. Cloud for the rest of the second half of the year. Again, Isaac Posh out with a lower body injury. We could go into some of the things that have leaked online in terms of what that foot injury looks like and the story. Again, I will tell you that I am privy to what happened. We'll put it that way, but let's just
I'll say the rumors sounded gruesome. I won't say what they were for the fact that there is a little bit of an audience here, and I'm not going to be the one to spread them. But if you want to go look them up,
you're out there.
Yeah, they're out there.
They're out there. And I'm sure the coaching staff is loving the fact that those are out there. I mean, especially the two photos of what happened. And, at the end of the day, it happens, right? The injuries happen. Again, we go back to St. Cloud, right? It was Dylan Anhorn playing sewer ball before, has the knee injury that took him out essentially the last half of a season a couple of years ago. St. Cloud just has this knack of injuring some of their best players at the absolute worst times in the season. Not that there's a good time, but really down the stretch is when you want them. But back to Enright, right? He's really stepped up. And he took that net, right? They played James Gray and Gavin Wright that first weekend when Posh went down. And Wright essentially has had the net ever since. I do think in watching both those goaltenders, he is the better goaltender. He's got the better rebound control. He reads the play better. He's just more calm in the net. I think James Gray looked a bit, shall we say, antsy in the crease. Didn't always control or get that first save. He did leave some rebounds there that normally you wouldn't want to see if you're in that position. So he still may get a shot, but Gavin Enright will be, to me, the X factors we go down the stretch here for St. Cloud. You mentioned Bernovic. To me, another couple guys that got to get going. Adam Ingram for St. Cloud. He was their leading point and goal scorer last year. Just scored his first goal of the season against St. Thomas before the turn of the calendar year. He needed that. He only had 2 points, 2 assists going into that game. So he's a guy that, again,
that might be crazier. Like I can understand being in a slump where you're just not finding the back of the net, but to only have the 2 points given the lead up and what he's already done to date or previously is a little bit surprising.
It is surprising. He did start the season battling some injuries. I just don't feel like he really got the start that he needed. And granted, injuries, I know fans are going to say, well, you injured to get back together. Like, what, so what? Get over it. It's not like that sometimes. Athletes are creatures of habit and routine, right? And sometimes, especially the beginning of the year, where I think that routine is more important to kind of get yourself feeling good about your game. It just wasn't there for him. And he's been shooting the puck. At times he's been passive, but he's been getting better, just not rewarded. Finally got one through off of an unbelievably laser wrist shot. I think it was less than 90 seconds into the game against St. Thomas. So I hope he continues to find, and hopefully the floodgates have opened for him. But Max, let's do this before we wrap up for this.
I got one thing quick.
Yes.
I hate to do this to myself, but it's only fair because I took a shot at Enright and then I just pointed that out as being funny. And it's something that I hope is only going to be true for the time being, and I won't have to say it ever again. But surprising insult stat for UMD, Max Plante hasn't won a game as a Bulldog yet. He has started that first game. They lost. He was injured for a couple of wins. And then he left for Canada for the World Juniors, and they got that win against Bemidji. So of the 5 games he's played, UMD has lost every one of those. And so he has not got a win in a Bulldog sweater yet, which is crazy. Not his fault. I can't say any more nice things about Max Plante. It's just one of those weird things that it hasn't gone his way in any of the contests that he's been a part of yet. So fingers crossed that changes. Wow. But, hopefully we can both go in the upward trajectory. From
it has to change, right, Max? There's just no way. That's just a crazy set of very unique circumstances.
Yeah.
So it will get done, just for my sake, please, not this weekend. Because well, and here's the similar part, right? We talked about before our holiday break about how I was nervous about the St. Thomas game because of the pairwise discrepancy.
Right.
It's not much different this time, right? St. Cloud is at 9th, and UMD, I have it pulled up, is 40th, right? So brutal. Despite the conference implications that you talked about in terms of being the points in that, they wouldn't be tied points wise, but they would have a similar win-loss record. Yep. St. Cloud would have a 1-point edge if UMD would sweep, but the potential pairwise implications if this goes eggshell broke for St. Cloud could be massive. So with that being said, Max, I want to get your non-biased predictions of this weekend as best as you can muster about what to expect this weekend from 2 squads that again, guys have been off except for a few and now trying to get back into the swing of things. We know the NCHC takes no prisoners. It does not care that there was a holiday break. You got to go and play 120 minutes of solid hockey and get the W's when you can. What do you expect?
I expect St. Cloud to come out with a much better game plan, more structured and just tighter. Look, on Friday, UMD probably loses in what should be a 1-goal game, turns into a 2-goal game with an empty net loss. That sounds like a downer, but that's just been the way that things have trended for them. And then Saturday, just based on the history of the series, I would say that we're looking at about a 12 penalty game, probably 2 major ejections, going into overtime, and a fast break for one of the teams where it ends up going in. And I'm gonna call it right now. That one is going to be Dom James, because he has not been on the positive side of many of those this year. He's had a couple of opportunities, been goalied a few times, lost it off a stick one time, lost an edge one time. It's just got to click for him in overtime eventually. That guy works harder than anybody when he's got space, and is one of the fastest skaters on UMD, and probably top 20% in college hockey in terms of the speed that he's got. So I'll call him winning the game winner in overtime on Saturday. So bad weekend for UMD if that happens in terms of points and record again, but just based on what I've seen this year and in the history of the series, that's what I've got on my docket. How about you?
So I have it painted a little bit different. So St. Cloud this year, especially Fridays, let's just say the puck drops before they do. We'll put it
okay.
So there've been some slow starts, and as you and I both know, in this conference and any game, you can't afford that, right? They've been caught kind of on their heels before. So if UMD starts with a heavy sort of physical forecheck early, I think they can catch St. Cloud off guard a little bit. That's my fear. The bad news for Bulldogs fans is when St. Cloud does wake up, watch out, right?
Sure.
You've got Dom James. I think the big agitator for us has been a freshman from Andover, Gavin Thorson, who has been in the middle of some shenanigans, both deserved and undeserved. I think he can play with an edge at times when he chooses to, but he's not, shall we say, an uncontrolled bullet that you just, you shoot up in the sky and say, well, good luck, buddy. It's not like that.
Sounds like him and Joey Pierce will be going at each other and face washing one another.
Probably, very much so. And with that being said, though, to your point, the other thing that makes me nervous is, can St. Cloud stay away from, getting involved in some of those extracurriculars, because they've shown, at least under the Brett Larson era for me, is that that's something that can throw them off completely in terms of their game. And there's guys on the roster. We've already mentioned Thorson. There are others as well. Grant Ashawn, Jack Ryman, who let's just say that if you offer them the dance, they're not going to say no to it. And I get it. You're supposed to do that. If I'm in their skates, I'm doing the same thing. But the St. Cloud power play, not great. They're sitting at what, 12 or 13% of the season. It's been better.
Ooh, I didn't realize it was that bad.
It's been better looking, and they've been getting better puck movement, but they just haven't really finished their opportunities getting the puck in the back of the net. So, in terms of taking advantage of some opportunities, I would like to see, if there's anything you'd like to see change, the power play has to start converting. It just has to. The penalty kill has been really good for St. Cloud, so that's a positive. But at the end of the day, I'm more concerned for both of our teams. The post-holiday rust, right? What does the conditioning look like? Can they get into the mentality of this is a conference game that's got a ton of implications, both within the conference and, as we already discussed, on the national pairwise stage? So with that being said, I do think St. Cloud wins night number 1, and I do think they get night number 2, however, in overtime as well. So I think they take 4 of 6 points, but it's not going to be easy. It never is between these two squads.
Right.
UMD, as much as they've had some ups and downs this year, they make you work for every inch of ice, and St. Cloud has got to be ready for that battle in the corners, along the walls, through the middle of the ice. It's going to be a bruise and cruise type series, I think, and St. Cloud just has to be mentally prepared to go into that type of battle. If they do not, it might be the opposite results here, and UMD could see themselves in a much different light, especially in conference play, if that turns their way.
Yeah, they need it desperately at this point. And I was mentioning online and a couple other spots when I'm talking to some people that I would love to see UMD get back into some of those situations where they're scoring the greasy goals with guys out front and whatnot. And I don't know that they've got the build with the size and the age of their team right now to get as many of those. But that doesn't mean you can't still be out there and kind of be prepared to get a few of them. And so we just need somebody to step up that's willing to be in those positions. That you're going to take a stick or two to the hip or whatnot, which I hope gets kind of culled a little bit in the league. That's just going to be a part of hockey no matter what, though. And so finding a guy that's willing to take a little bit of abuse in front of the net and then get rewarded for it is going to be a key for success. It always has been in this series.
It comes down to who wants it more and who plays, shall we say, the more mistake-free game, right? It really comes down to that. Last year, right, it was, a 2-1 score, then like a 6-5 barn burner that had lead changes up and down the entire night. Not good for your cardiologist. Would not recommend watching this game.
No.
But for hockey fans, it is great entertainment when these two squads come together again. First of 2 series again this weekend, up in Duluth first, and then not until March will these teams come back together again. Last but not least, it will be in St. Cloud. So, Max, any parting thoughts before we get back to some college hockey this weekend?
No parting thoughts for me. I'll be up in Duluth. Hopefully I'll be able to catch both games depending on what time I'm able to get out of work on Friday here and what time I'm able to get up there. But Saturday for sure I'll be at the rink. So looking forward to seeing it in person.
Perfect. We'll get the full report coming for you next week. And for all of you watching and listening at home, thank you so much for joining us again and back with us again for 2025. The second half of the college hockey season is upon us, and we'll be here to cover it for you all. For Max Veech, I'm Nick Maxson. Thank you for watching NCHC on MNCAA.